Welcome to NFL Daily, where we don't need a stinking island to talk about quarterbacks. I'm Gregg Rosenthal. I'm here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio and talking to my friend, Ben Solak of ESPN from across the country. Can I call you a friend, Ben? We've just done a couple podcasts together. That might be presumptive.
Yeah. And we've regularly been at the same events and then not been able to attend the same like social gatherings. Like, oh, I've got a pod, got to do this. Oh, you got to go somewhere TV and do that. So yeah, friend.
That's
but also
a stretch.
I'm looking forward. I think I've shook your hand once. I hope we'll make a second time sometime soon.
It's a stretch. I felt self-conscious about it the second I said it. But Ben was the guy I thought of here. And shout out to our listener, Eric Jensen, who gets a co-producer credit here, saying we hadn't been doing enough quarterback stuff lately, and thought of Ben. Talk a little quarterbacks before we break for the summer. So we're going to talk about the most interesting quarterbacks of 2025. But before we do that, just a little bit of news dropped, surprisingly, on Thursday morning. We got some contract extensions for general manager Jason Licht of the Buccaneers and his head coach Todd Bowles through 2028. We had Jason Licht on the show earlier this offseason. We've said it when he's not on the show that we think he is one of the best GMs. Was drafted very high in our GM draft just a few weeks ago. So makes a lot of sense that he gets it. It's interesting that Bowles gets it at the same time. Where do you look or where do you see this Bucs team, like where they are in their team build and especially where Bowles and Licht are at?
Yeah, I've been very big on the Bucs this offseason. And I think that when you go to make the NFC market for who's going to represent the conference in the Super Bowl, I think you have to put the Eagles at the top. And then I think the Bucs deserve to be in that next tier. I would like Lions, Rams, Buccaneers would be kind of my next grouping. The Buccaneers defense last year was really rough, and they had a ton of injuries in the back seven, and they struggled to generate a pass rush. If you go and you look at the history of Todd Bowles' defenses, it's probably going to get better. Like, that's one of the worst defenses he's ever fielded. He's a pretty reliably good defensive coach, has a system that's been working for a long time. They invested a ton in that back seven. So I think the defense is going to take a step back to normalcy. And then that offense returned all 11 starters. They re-signed Ben Bredesen in free agency. They re-signed Chris Godwin in free agency. Everybody's back, and Emeka Egbuka is the cherry on top. So long as you trust Josh Grizzard to kind of keep the ship online, as I would expect him to in Liam Cohen's departure, that's going to be a top 10 offense again. So I'm big on the Bucs. I know that there's frustration with Todd Bowles' game management and timeout usage. He's not an offensive head coach, but I still think he's a good head coach in the league. He's a great defensive coach. And yeah, Jason Licht, proof of the pudding's in the eating with that team. They're a good group.
Yeah, he's a great game plan defensive coach, and that's why I'm not too worried about last season for him. I would also caution people of assuming too much based on the extension. Like, Jason Light's going to be there for a while. If for whatever reason they had a really disappointing year, that ownership group has eaten some coaching contracts before. And so it's great for Todd Bowles and his family, great guy, that he gets some long-term security, but it's still the NFL. Like, that did not help out Raheem Morris back in the day, actually way back in the John Gruden days. He had just signed like an extension. They have rolled through coaches if they feel like making a change. So they're going to have to keep winning. I'm with you though. I hate that it's the consensus pick, but it makes too much sense that the Buccaneers to me are right there at the top of one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl. All right, let's get to our quarterbacks. Let's talk most interesting quarterbacks. And I alluded to it at the top. We do a lot of talk about who are the best 10 to 12 quarterbacks in the league, or the most fascinating, who defines a position. That's what we do on Quarterback Island, but we haven't done that in the offseason. I didn't want to do a rankings. I just wanted to kind of take a step back maybe, Ben, and kind of look at where these quarterbacks are in the big picture of their careers, like where they are at their development, who is the most interesting guys going into 2025. So this isn't a ranking, but we'll just go back and forth, and you can get us going who you find interesting.
Yeah, I would be remiss to come on a Gregg Rosenthal podcast and not start with Geno Smith.
Oh, okay.
I think Geno is a really, really interesting quarterback for 2025 because Geno got the starting job in 22 there in Seattle, started for 3 years, and pretty much everybody agreed this is a lot better than we thought it was going to be. Who knew Geno Smith had this in him? But there's still a pretty decent divide between those who are like, this is a good starting quarterback in the NFL. This guy's clearly got it. He can be like, the passer, the captain of a top offense. Or no, he just won another big pile of like decent starters. The Sam Darnold move is not like a downgrade. Maybe you win with him. Sometimes he's got some problems, whatever. I feel like there's still a solid disparity between the believers and the doubters, even in the Geno Smith ascension.
Where are you?
I'm a believer, and like I'm firmly there. Last season, if you look at true dropbacks, we're talking not play action, not screens, and not garbage time, Geno was 8th in success rate, 13th EPA per play, 3rd in on target rate, 1st in explosive pass rate. Geno Smith is heavy metal. He grips it and rips it. Like, he's a very fun pocket passer to watch. We saw him for those 3 years in Seattle behind a struggling offensive line, with a carousel of offensive coordinators, without a reliable running game, right? By success rate, his 3 run offenses were 25th, 17th, and 31st over the last 3 years. Distance to go on third down, 30th, 21st, and 25th.
Yes.
He was playing behind the sticks, right? Behind on an offensive line that did not pass protect well, and he had to have a lot of true dropbacks, a lot of 3rd and longs. Now he's going to Las Vegas, where, like, I'm not sure the pass protection is better, but the environment is totally new, right? It's not, okay, shots at DK Metcalf anymore. Now it's your Jacoby Myers, your Brock Bowers, your underneath stuff. It's a Chip Kelly offense. The running game might be a lot better. The drafting of Ashton Genty. Like, the Raiders are just a very unique nucleus, a system in general, a unique solar system in general. And then dropping Geno in there, I think we're going to learn a ton about the truth of Geno Smith. I think you and I believing that he's that legitimate guy, or maybe, we'll continue to see the high interception issues, some of the sack problems, some of the inviting pressure issues, and we'll realize what the ceiling is on the guy. So I think we're going to learn a ton about Geno in 25.
I agree. He was high on my list, but I just want to replay like everything you just said contextually about Geno Smith every once in a while on this podcast when anyone comes at me about Geno. That was absolutely beautiful, because the situation for Seattle, we've talked about it, and you did a good job doing it. This is a different spot, though, and Chip Kelly, he's fascinating as well. Geno Smith is going to turn 35 years old this year, and so the way that he's changed his career around, like, he is going to be a touchstone for talented quarterbacks who didn't get off to a fast start for whatever reason, or maybe didn't even play that much in their 20s forever, and that's great, but can you have a fourth act, essentially? His first act is the Jets. His second act is floating around and being a backup to all these great quarterbacks. His third act, people can disagree about how great it was, but I think he's been underrated still because of the situation around him. And as you say, he's heavy metal. Great way to put it. That number 3 in on target rate really stands out to me, because that's the thing to me. He can make high level throws and be on target and does the hardest things so well. Now, that said, like, it is another level to go do it on another team, totally different situation. I know he's had a different offensive coordinator in Seattle a couple different times, so he's had to learn new systems. But it is different to lead a totally different organization, and it's a weird build, as you mentioned, kind of Genty and Bowers leading the way, and Kelly. But I'm excited. I don't know if I'm not going to change my mind no matter how much this goes, how well this goes, in terms of how he did in Seattle, based on how he does in Las Vegas. But yeah, if he's money in a totally different situation, that elevates his career to an even different level. Like, we really haven't seen many careers quite like him. He's like a poor man's Rich Gannon or something like that.
Yeah, I do think, and like to step away from the off-field stuff and to remind ourselves that Pete Carroll was the guy who had faith in him. Geno has a very strong relationship with Pete. And you go back and you watch, especially this 2024 season, it's pretty clear that, like, Geno and DK are frustrated each other for a long time, and like no one was able to really reconcile that. Like, they were just bad body language stuff, especially second half of the season. I think Geno's play can even take a step forward, independent of like, oh, who's he throwing to? Offensive line situation. Just with like, I'm back with Pete. This is the guy who believed in me. This is the guy who first got me up out of that pit, and now we can elevate another level. So I'm very high on the Raiders. If you ask me the team most likely to jump from like, picking top 10 to contending for a playoff spot, Las Vegas is like top of my list. I think they're going to be legit.
I feel that, and then I look at the depth chart, especially on defense, and I do worry that I'm just counting
a lot of snaps.
I'm counting so much on just like the magic Pete Carroll like sprinkle all over the roster, but it could work. All right, I'm gonna go with CJ Stroud. I'm not putting this in any order.
Yeah, great one.
But sometimes I'll see the numbers this offseason, and I've seen a couple of the quarterback rankings, or you look at just the stats from last year, whether it's success rate or EPA per play, and you see like CJ Stroud's like in the mid-20s, and you're like, whoa, because I just didn't feel as different about CJ Stroud as a player last year as the numbers indicated. If anything, the first 6 or 7 weeks, I thought he was fantastic in a very difficult situation, and then the roof caved in on him, and he started to play a little more like a young quarterback. But one of the things that I believe in watching quarterbacks over the years is if you can show a high level of play at some point, especially as early as CJ Stroud did in terms of the neck up and in terms of the accuracy, that level is there. And I'm not worried about him at all. So he's got to do it. It's a different system. I know on paper, the offensive line looks like a mess. So it's not like everything is perfect. Tank Dell is not going to be around. He's going to have to work in a couple of rookies, but he is such a fun player to watch. Not totally dissimilar to a Geno Smith in the way that he can move inside the pocket and that he's just an accurate and, as you would say, again, heavy metal down the field, like just a talented thrower. But you want to see it happen. Year 3, CJ Stroud in the new offense. I'm excited to see what he looks like.
Yeah, when you go and you look at Stroud's 23 into 24, it reminds me a lot of the discussion we had about Mahomes 2020 into 21 when defenses first really started changing how they played against the guy. And there was a growing process, both from a coaching perspective and from a quarterback play style perspective. And how do I deal with this? I have my numbers I wrote about it in week 12. So I don't know what these season exact numbers were, but he went from seeing in his rookie season about 35% cover 3 down to about 26%. His cover 2 rate, he saw it doubled from 10% to 20%. He was just seeing too high at a dramatically higher rate. And it's because those 23 Texans, Bobby Slowick, it's condensed personnel, run the football, 21, 12 personnel, run. And then even with the addition of Joe Mixon into 24, defenses were like, okay, we're more scared of CJ. We're more scared of Nico Collins. We're more scared of the top coming off this defense. We're going to make you be more physical with us underneath. And that's where that offensive line really, really failed them. And so Stroud spoke a lot about this. You heard him talk about it in the offseason, before the season, and then during the season about how I've had to pretty dramatically change how I play because I'm just not getting the coverages that I was able to enjoy in year 1. And so the expectation for Nick Caley, who I think is probably the most important new offensive, it's either him or Josh Grizzard there with Tampa Bay, but the most important new offensive coordinator hire, the emphasis is just if you can get the easy buttons back, if you can get the strain back in the box, you can get a little bit more single eye coverage and let Stroud and Nico do what they do well. This can rebound immediately. The offensive line might be a limited factor, but you can get back to those coverages you want to see, get back to that heavy zone base personnel, and then just grip it and rip it against play action. And so I still have a ton of faith in Stroud, the individual player. Question marks, offensive coordinator and offensive line are kind of going to dictate how much we can get back to that rookie season level.
Yeah, the ability to ultimately handle pressure and move around in the pocket while going through your reads is just such a hard skill to learn. I don't think you lose it. I think you get into bad habits when the offensive line is totally falling apart and you're not getting enough answers from your coordinator. And so to me, that he's got that. He's got the tough stuff. And I'm really excited, and I'm rooting for him since my son, for whatever reason, lives and dies by CJ Stroud. All right, give me another interesting quarterback, Ben.
Let's stay with that 23 class. I think Bryce Young is absolutely fascinating. We've seen a lot of quarterback recoveries over the last 2 years. We've seen the Baker Mayfield moments and the Geno Smith moments. You have your Sam Darnold moment that's happening now. But if we can get this fast of a recovery from like a historically bad rookie season into then a functional year 2 season, and then year 3, he's like cemented as the starter. He is a legit quarterback in the NFL. That's a huge turnaround, a massive feather in Dave Canales' cap. I have my suspicions. I think a lot of what you saw Bryce Young be successful with last season was making really high leverage connections down the field on important downs. From week 5 on, so this is after he was benched, he was 31st in on target rate, 4th in completion percentage over expectation. So that's telling you we're not delivering the number of accurate passes we'd like to see, but boy, when they are accurate, we're able to come down with them, even in contested situations, even further down the field. And of course, the Panthers wide receiver core was not renowned for being like a great unit. But if you go put the film on and see what Jalen Coker's doing from down the field and Jadavian Sanders is doing after the catch, Adam Thielen's doing through contact, they were getting away with, pressured throws and one-on-one shots and able to live on that. That's typically not super sustainable, and especially doesn't feel sustainable when we have a smaller quarterback back there, because the hits that he's taking and the moonshots that he's connecting on are just a lot more frail. You think about the late career Russell Wilson, where it's like, all right, I don't know if we can continue to cash these checks the way that we did when we were younger. Russell moved a lot better. He escaped a lot more danger. He survived a lot more contact than Bryce Young's really ever going to do, because Bryce Young is that thinner guy. And so the production last season was hugely important because it gave Young confidence. It gave the Panthers a blueprint. It gave Dave Canales something he could rely back on. They draft Teteroa McMillan, which is a clear sign that they want to continue living on some of these vertical downfield balls. but it's a thin needle to thread. It really, really is. And so I'm cautiously optimistic, but still have my doubts about Bryce Young in year 3. And so again, an interesting quarterback who we're going to learn a lot more about.
I feel like you're a skeptic deep down.
Yes. I mean, like I wrote after the benching in week 2 that this is chalked. Like I was like, there's just no way, because you go back and watch week 1 and week 2, dude. I mean, it's not just bad. It's dreadful, right?
You gotta give it some time, but he is different than almost any quarterback like development that I can think of. Because my thing going into last year with him was, can he just be Alex Smith? And I've seen enough rookie quarterbacks that look completely abysmal that had good careers. It's not that often, but Alex Smith is one of them. Eli Manning is another one. Jared Goff's another. Those are 3 of the worst rookie seasons of all time. They're as bad or worse as Bryce, including how Bryce looked in those first couple games. And they bounced back. The difference is Bryce's size. I know Alex Smith wasn't huge, but he's much bigger than Bryce Young. Are you at all concerned, like looking inside? I'm not sure how big you are, Ben, but I'm a very diminutive man that it's almost like a self-hating thing that you can't imagine a guy like Bryce Young being that successful at the NFL level.
It's a big part of it, right? If Bryce Young could succeed at the NFL level, it means I could have succeeded at the NFL level and I quit too early. That's obviously that was the big difference maker. Bryce does have a few inches and a few pounds on me, unfortunately. But I think that, like, you bring up the Alex Smith, you bring up Eli Manning, you bring up the Jared Goff. The path back is clear, but the reason why, like, again, stylistically what he did in 24 is important. I'm moving into 25 is like, man cannot live on bread alone. You cannot live on downfield shots alone. You can't do it. If you could, Jameis Winston would be making $45 million. It's just they're too volatile, right? It's you hit on them and you put up 30 points, you miss on 2, all of a sudden you're down by 20, you've thrown a couple of interceptions. Like we just know that in NFL passing offenses, you have to have a quick game component. And Young, last year, they survived without a quick game for like an extended period of time. It is hugely to Dave Canales' credit that they were able to get that done. We know that's not sustainable. It's one of like the truths of NFL football. What are they able to do in year 3 with a more confident Bryce Young, with a bit of a retooled wide receiver room, with another year offseason to work on this, and a much more confident Bryce Young? If we're ever going to get that keystone plugged back into this offense, I think it can happen this year because the stars are aligning. I got to see it. I got to see it before I believe it.
They have Hunter Renfrow, too, the big Hunter Renfrow rejuvenation. Yes. I mean, he did have this crazy illness that makes me think if he's actually over that he can contribute, but he's no lock to even make that team. I do love that you point out the profile because I don't think that many people watched a ton of Bryce Young last season. And the thing that got me so excited, but I think also is making you cautious, is like he was among the league leaders. PFF does big time throws. That tracked with what I saw. I mean, and it's one of the reasons I love Geno Smith too. Like Bryce Young was hitting a lot of small window throws down the field, like beautiful throws. So you saw the arm talent. You saw a little bit more of the escapability, but I think he's going to need to lean on that more and be confident and being able to throw on the move and everything. But yeah, can you do that year after year? He did a lot of the hard stuff, which is exciting. All right, I'm gonna go with a guy that on one hand, like, isn't interesting in terms of like if I was in a room with him, like he'd be low on my rankings of who I would just want to hang out with, I think, for like an hour, but is interesting of where he's at in his career, and that's Trevor Lawrence. I really do.
My guess was Goff. Okay. I wasn't sure which very polite but generally unexciting white man we were going with there.
Herbert would be another one, just because I've heard, Mina did that profile on him, and I think it helped us learn a lot about Justin Herbert, but I don't think he's effusive in talking. And I don't know. Trevor Lawrence, I don't even find him like a fascinating player when he's on the field, but to me, he's a fascinating discussion. And I think just adding Travis Hunter to this team makes him more fascinating, and having the combination of Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. while you're leaning into Hunter as a receiver on the same team. Look, all of Lawrence's career, I've been a little underwhelmed. And not just because he came into the league with so much hype, but that he's just never been consistent. And that's what I want. Like someone that is a completely consistent thrower of the football in terms of his accuracy, even his best moments of his career. And I think maybe the best moment is that second half comeback against the Chargers.
Yeah.
Well, the first half of that game, he throws 4 interceptions. And to me, that's kind of typical of his career. If you remember last season, like the first couple of weeks were rough. And then he bounces back for a little bit. And it's just not there on a week-to-week basis for me. And we have our friends in the business. I'm not sure exactly where you are on this scale, but our friend Nate Tice, who's coming up on a big episode for us later this month, you know, he's still got Trevor Lawrence in his top 10 of where he thinks he's going to be in 2025. And I can't get there, but smart people can. And so to me, this is a season where he's got another great chance and he's got some great weapons around him.
Yeah. So I think I continue to have cautious faith and optimism in Trevor. I'm probably above the public consensus on Trevor. I'm not where Nate is, right? If you gave me Trevor or Geno over the last 3 seasons, like to me that I'm probably taking Geno Smith for the next couple relative to Trevor, which feels crazy. Lawrence, I'm pretty confident in saying that this offense we're about to see with Liam Cohen, with Travis Hunter, with Brian Thomas Jr. is about the best that he's had available around him, right? I think that we cannot discount just how much of a false start out of the gate the Urban Meyer year was from a development perspective, from a leadership perspective, for your locker room, confident I can do this at the NFL level. And then the Doug Peterson years, which Doug doesn't have the bad name that Urban did, but from a execution on field perspective, there was a lot that was left to be desired there. So there should be hopefully a floor raising, buttoning up experience now with Liam Cohen and with a NFL offense a little bit more cutting edge. With Lawrence, it will be learning how to let the offense work for him, though. Like if Brian Thomas Jr. is this guy, which I think by this time next year, we'll be talking about Brian Thomas Jr. as okay, where is he in the top 5 of all NFL receivers right now? I think he's that caliber of dude. If Travis Hunter is that guy, highest drafted receiver, if he's playing receiver since Calvin Johnson, then let the guys work for you, right? It doesn't always need to be a 3-second drop back. It can be a 2-second drop back. It doesn't always need to be the deep boast. It can be the drag on 3rd and 6, and he's going to pick up the yardage for you. Lawrence has, in part because of his upbringing, part of who he's been with in Jacksonville, and then in part because of his play style, has not been willing to let other players be the elevators and kind of be the guys who lift things up. And that's where you get some of these 3rd down sacks, these 3rd down interceptions, right? These scrambles outside of the pocket then with these big hits and these injuries. So he's going to have to learn how to reduce himself a little bit if it is true that the pieces around him have improved. And accordingly, it's a much healthier offensive ecosystem.
Those are all really good points. And I think the issue I might have with Lawrence is that I'm going a little off intangibles in my doubt, which is not necessarily fair. That
you're like the Sports Illustrated piece when it came out that was like, this guy might like other things. Can we do it?
Okay. So it's a tricky thing to talk about because I hate it. Yep. I hate those sort of reports when it doesn't feel fair. But since he's been in the league, I have heard whispers about that from people that have been around that team and would have more of a place to have knowledge about it. And because you do wonder, what is stopping this guy? And all the quarterbacks at the top of the game, it's almost understood that they're absolutely maniacal in their preparation and in their intelligence on field. And that sometimes takes a while to get there. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger, for instance, I always point him out, was that guy early in his career. He became that guy. And so maybe Trevor Lawrence is just a little younger and a little further behind in the developmental track. But when I think about maybe what's gotten in the way for him just a little bit, I think, well, maybe his off field, whether it's preparation or just learning the game enough, and that takes being in the NFL, maybe that's just what's prevented him from getting 10%, 15% better and being the guy. So we'll see.
It's a very good point because again, I go back and I think to that Urban year and I think about how Lawrence came in as, the golden boy, the prince that was promised, ordained. He gets a coach in Urban who's not an NFL guy. And so he's not going to walk him in and say actually, this is how we do things in the NFL. This is the standard. Urban's just going to kind of, run it as Urban runs it. And then that Jaguars team was never really one for impactful, long-term, tenured offensive stars, right? It's not like they had the left tackle who'd been there for 10 years. It's not like they had the wide receiver who'd been doing it at a high level for 5 years. And even now, right, we're talking about Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, who are younger players than Lawrence. So Lawrence hasn't really, Christian Kirk is the most, I'm a vet, I do this right at the NFL level, march to the beat of my drum guy that I really feel like he's had. In terms of an actually impactful player. I mean, they had Morse last season.
Even his backup quarterbacks, like having Mac Jones with him or fighting
CJ
against
Beathard,
Gardner Minshew,
yeah.
who was the quarterback. I hear you, and that.
Yeah. No, I'm your comment is making me think about the fact that, yeah, like I wonder who, if you sat Lawrence down and said, who have you been your 3 biggest mentors in the NFL space right now, he would say.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he would struggle to get to 3, maybe a little bit.
It's like, Cam Robinson and.
Right. Evan Ingram. I don't know if these are the guys that we want to be, following
right.
the path that they beat.
Right. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back with a few more interesting quarterbacks. Back on NFL Daily. And yeah, if I'm going to give some pop to our super listener, Eric Jensen, for helping to suggest this episode, I might as well mention he hosts the End Zone podcast. Give him a little free plug. I was on it like a month ago, so shout out to him. He's a big fan of yours, Ben, and I am as well, and I want to hear who your next most interesting quarterback is.
Would you like, so we just did Lawrence. Would you like an first overall pick as Lawrence was, or would you like a member of the 2021 NFL draft class as Lawrence was? Dealer's choice.
Let's go number 1 overall pick.
All right. Low-hanging fruit, but Caleb is very interesting this year. Caleb Williams with the Bears. Because Caleb came out, I would say, with equivalent, if not superior, number 1 overall hype to that which Trevor Lawrence himself had when he was coming out, like, this is the guy, whatever. And then Williams had the very unfortunate luck of being in the same class as and selected 1 pick before a historically good rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And so the urgency feels very high on Caleb. Like, year 2, what's it going to look like, right? The addition of Ben Johnson. Oh, this is the offensive mastermind. We've been trying to get him out of Detroit for 3 offseasons. He finally takes a job with the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams ratchets up the urgency there. They spend a top 10 pick on Colston Loveland, pass catching tight end. They spend another pick on a wide receiver, Luther Burden. This a year after they spent a top 10 pick on a wide receiver. He's got the tools, right? The urgency levers up. I think people over-indexed how bad Williams' rookie season was because Jaden Daniels' rookie season was so good. If you look at quarterbacks last year, like, Caleb was unquestionably not great. 33rd in success rate, 30th EPA per dropback, 39th in off-target rate, 38th in sack rate among, like, kind of 40 quarterbacks who had enough dropbacks. If you look at first-round rookies, he was just like a lot more average in those numbers. 25th EPA per dropback, 29th in success rate. The sack rate was still really high, 43rd out of 46 quarterbacks. But for a rookie, he had a acceptably average, a little bit below average season with a lot of ups, a lot of downs. You go and you look at a team that had 3 different offensive play callers that fired their head coach in the middle of the season, and you go, okay, like, this should be recoverable. This should be fine. The sack rate is the thing that really stands out. That's heavily play style. He has to be the one to decide to take fewer sacks, throw the ball away more, get rid of it quicker. But I feel like Caleb's rookie season was not as poor and as worrisome as some people would have you believe. And then I do think that the addition of Ben Johnson and Colston Loveland and Luther Burden and DJ Moore being there, Rome Odunze there, obviously the whole change on the interior offensive line, I do think there's a very nice high ceiling there. The entire deck around him has been shuffled, and the deck was really bad last time around. So I think a big year 2 leap is not an unreasonable thing to expect from Caleb Williams. At any time a rookie is bad, we kind of always think there's going to be a year 2 leap. And that's usually just kind of like a little bit jumping in or guessing in the dark, stabbing in the dark. This time, I really do think there's enough anecdotal evidence. I think, the production's going to get a lot better, a lot quicker. I'm interested to see it.
I totally agree that he was better last season than he got credit for. It was a fine rookie season. The fact that he had as much hype as he did and was the number 1 overall pick, I still saw enough to hold on to. The situation and the just inability to get rid of the ball, even when he was protected well, was a problem. And I think good coaching, and he's falling into that this year, will really help him out. But I'm with you. Like, to me, he still had more box office moments than I think people really recognize. Like, it was kind of awesome, like some of the things he did, especially early in the season. So I'm excited to see him this year as well.
He was supposed to be 5-2 with a game-winning drive against Jaden Daniels in Washington. And then Tyree Stevenson started talking to a Commanders fan, and the entire Bears season legitimately fell off the tracks. And so, it was a lot closer to a lot more, okay, that wasn't as good as we thought it was going to be, but that was fine, than people realized.
Yeah, and his strengths, like, he was too cautious, but he really did, like, very Aaron Rodgers, like, just like was absolutely loath to like put a ball in harm's way, and that's a positive thing out of a young quarterback when you can mix it with some of the arm talent that he has. Speaking of which, maybe this is the 2021 guy you were gonna say. I guess I'll go Herbo. It's time. It's funny.
Herbo's 2020.
Okay. Oh, good call.
Yeah.
Always a huge Herbo fan, and last year, maybe it was because of the playoff game. I think it was the first year that he almost got not too much credit because I think he had a good year, but I wouldn't say I was underwhelmed, but I don't think it went over par for what I was hoping for first year out of Harbaugh. And I know the efficiency numbers were really good, and they really backed up the attempts. Speaking of Caleb Williams, like I think that's going to be part of his success this year is you just back up. Yeah, you're going to lean more on the running game, and that's going to be it. But the playoff game was tough, and there was a lot of play action. Not that that's like a bad thing. And there were a lot of big time throws, but I do think the second year of Jim Harbaugh that a lot of, I'm not going to say excuse making that Herbo Nation has been doing, myself included, over the last 5 years, but some of the context that we've added, I do think a lot of that will be out the window this year. I mostly feel good about the offensive line. I wish they did a little more on the interior, but I trust in the coaching staff. And for the most part, I think the roster's in good shape. Like the weapons aren't amazing, but I think the continuity and what they've added, like that's enough to feel a little bit better about what's around him. And I just think they need to dial the lever up on counting on him even more. So to me, it's a big year where he came into the league, those first two seasons especially, like you just expected his career arc to be a little different. And we've seen career arcs like this too. Like I do think it's time for him to ramp it up and kind of be in that conversation as one of the five, one of the three, whatever it is, best quarterbacks in the league. I think he could do it, but I think it's an interesting year for him to go make that happen.
Yeah. So I think that what they want to be identity-wise on offense is a little bit more important to them than it is to the average team. And that's because Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh are pretty, this is the way we're going to go about things. Heavier personnel, we're going to be play action, we're going to be very run heavy. And if you go and you look back at their season last year, they were extremely run heavy for the first like 4 or 5 weeks of the season, right? Super high run rate over expectation. And like they were getting the big J.K. Dobbins runs, but from a snap to snap perspective, it wasn't working well. And they kind of realized, all right, we need to ratchet up the pass a little bit more. And then they did that. And they started dropping back a little bit more. And then J.K. got hurt in the middle of the year. And now it's Gus Edwards. And they've got Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal. And it's like not, Gus isn't running as well as he was. Okay, we have to pass it a little bit more. I think they had to get away from their identity in a way that like they knew their interior offensive line and their running back room was not yet ready to kind of be what they want to be as a team. So with Mekhi Becton in the building, with Amarian Hampton in the building, I think you're going to see them go and slide back to being like one of the run heaviest teams in football. And for Herbert, it's going to be right, a lot of play action, a lot of shot. And if Trey Harris is what they drafted him to be, and you saw Vlad McConkey to be your like kind of base down, quick game, underneath separator, your 3rd and 5 guy, the vision is a lot more clear to me, such I think they'll just be generally a lot more offensive success. However, the 2 baskets with the most eggs are 1st-round rookie running back Amarian Hampton and 2nd-round rookie wide receiver Trey Harris. So we are putting a lot of hope in that these rookies can fill the roles we're expecting them to fill. And so I'm always hesitant around the offensive innovation, creativity, and problem solving of a Greg Roman offense. I've seen it enough times with enough really good quarterbacks with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore that I know that they kind of they get their formula and then they stick to it even when they start needing to color outside the lines a little bit. And so I'm really hoping that the pieces that they added allowed them to be in that formula. Because I think this offense could be really good if they hit, if that formula is successful. If they're not getting what they want out of Hampton, if they're not getting the field stretching out of Trey Harris, I think you're to see them just kind of bang their head up against the wall again this year.
Yeah, and the interior line, like they bring in Mekhi Becton. We'll see, especially in pass protection, but the combination of Mekhi Becton, maybe Zion Johnson is playing center as a salvation, maybe not, maybe it's Bradley Bozen, maybe it's Andre James, like that, those 3 starting on the interior, I don't feel amazed. Maybe it's Jamari Sawyer is there too. Like, I don't feel amazing about all that. And part of what I wanted to get to, for me, most interesting is just the way way that Herbert made me feel, Solak, as a rookie. We're here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio, and like me and Wes just talking about just the jaw-dropping plays Herbert was dropping as a rookie. He led the league in interception rate last year, just like, didn't make any mistakes basically all regular season and then kind of collapsed in the playoff game. I just want to see a little more of that. That's not Herbo's nature totally, but just a little more playmaking, a little more, let's take some chances, devil may care, count on all that natural gifts that he has. And I hope he's confident enough to do that and just make me feel about Herbo like I used to.
Yeah, that playoff game is so tricky because man, was it bad. And
really
I do think that the worst draw for the Chargers is the Texans, because I think that Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt can pretty much win you to a neutral or better against 31 of the 32 pass rush duos in the NFL. And I think the 32nd is Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, who just are so freaking fast, right? And then they have the ability to press up on Ladd McConkey to bother him, right? To fluster him with press coverage, which is the thing that a player that size is going to struggle with. And all of a sudden, like everything the Chargers wanted to do in the passing game just wasn't there. Herbert's used to having time and being safe off the edges and just wasn't, and it imploded. And so I don't know. I think that maybe the biggest note for the Chargers in 2025 is avoid Houston at all costs. Because that's just it's a bad matchup versus how that offense is built versus how Houston's defense is built. Houston wins that game, they get Baltimore. D'Amico hasn't beaten Lamar Jackson in like 3 years, right? Like that's their bad matchup. But that's kind of how it goes sometimes with styles making fights.
That's fair. All right, give me another quarterback you're looking at.
Yeah, my 2021 guy was Justin Fields.
Okay.
I'll never stop being interested in Justin Fields. And I was ready to just be like quietly, personally, privately interested in Justin Fields. And then the Jets gave him like a decently sized contract with no quarterback competition. I was like, all right, I'm back to being publicly interested in Justin Fields. The Steelers season, which he started while Russell Wilson had the calf issue, was illustrative in the sense that they did like more quick game stuff and he was a little bit better in the drop back than he had been. He was getting the ball out a little bit sooner, but it was also wildly frustrating because they didn't run him. And the whole premise behind Justin Fields is you got to run him. He had 6 carries a game last season, lowest since his rookie season with the Bears. He only had 9.84 total scramble EPA, lowest of his entire career. 13% of his runs went over 10 yards, lowest of his entire career. They used him as like a short yardage, 3rd and 1, 4th down guy. They didn't want him breaking the pocket and creating stuff outside of space. Inherently not how Justin Fields works in theory and how we've seen him work on paper, right? That 22 season where he rushed for over 1,000 yards. Like people forget just how good that season was from a rushing perspective. You have to be willing to just let him create outside of space. And like so much of the success of Jaden Daniels is predicated on the idea that we're going to give this guy design runs and we're going to allow him to scramble. 25% scramble rate on 3rd down Jaden Daniels had last year. It's the highest in NFL history. Just let him go, right? A quarterback scramble is such a valuable play league-wise by EPA perspective, and the Steelers kept the handcuffs on him last season. The Jets go and they gave him all this money, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, Aaron Glenn there in Detroit. You go back and you look at those games Fields played against Glenn's defense in Detroit, and I mean, he was averaging like 85 yards a game, and it's because all that man coverage, because of that scrambling ability. So if Glenn knows something and values something in Fields, it's going to be the tuck and run. It's going to be the ability to put the ball in his hands and play 11-on-11 football. I think you're going to see that design run rate shoot back up to more of those 2022 Bears levels where he was running 9 times a game, 10 times a game, 11 times a game. And I think that will benefit him offensively. I think Garrett Wilson's the best receiver he's played with in his NFL career. I think we're going to see a better looking Justin Fields. I don't know if it's good enough to be a long-time starter. I don't know if it's good enough to hold the job, but I think we're going to see a better looking Justin Fields in 2025. I'm excited to see it.
I thought we saw one in 2024 until that Raiders game where they won it, but he
matured, but he still wasn't being used the right way. So hopefully they use him the right way.
Yeah, I think you're right. And this podcast, I feel like we're too high on the Jets at this point, but I've liked what they've done all offseason. I think the non-Bills teams in the AFC East are all much more equal than they are different. And for whatever reason, people see the Jets as way lower. And I think a Fields Assance is going to be part of that. It's not his last chance, but it's probably his best chance to at least establish himself as a guy that could be starting in week 1 pretty often. I do want to get through a few more, so we'll go quick here. I kind of miss Dak Prescott. It just seems so long ago that weirdly, I feel like we haven't talked about Dak much this offseason. It just seems like so long ago he was second in MVP. Like he was literally in the 2023 season, he was second in MVP, and that playoff game didn't go well. And last season, I think people just think of it as this injury season, but man, it was a funky season. He did start half the season. He played 8 games, and it just never was right. And so seeing him in this offense with George Pickens added to the mix, without Mike McCarthy in the mix, this sort of hybrid where I think it's going to be mostly Brian Schottenheimer, and I'm not sure how much Clayton Adams, who they brought in from Arizona, in theory for the run game, is really going to have a voice. We'll find out. But I do miss him, and he is still young enough that, at 33, like, it feels like he's on the back nine. It's like Tom Brady, not that he's going to be Tom Brady, but, Tom Brady and even Peyton Manning, they were just warming up. Like 33 was like the beginning of some of their very best years. So I'm not ruling that out with Dak Prescott, a guy who wins from the neck up. And I'm just very interested to see, because I do think the range of outcomes is huge. I've always been a Dak guy, but this could go horribly, or he could be back in the MVP mix. I really don't know what to expect, and that's why I find him so interesting.
Yeah, not to be too, the Cowboys drive content, but the league is better when Dak Prescott is good and when the Cowboys offense is better, because Dak plays such a cool, cerebral, precise, pocket passing, dice you up style of offense that leads to some really good games against some really good defenses against which other teams and other offenses struggle, right? Because he's pretty different stylistically than some of the other quarterbacks or some of the other top offenses. And so, yes, I love a good Dak season. We actually have a wide receiver too, question mark, in George Pickens for the first time in a while. I don't think you can set your watch to George Pickens, but the theory is there behind having a good wide receiver too. I'm terrified of the running game, but maybe the offensive line is so good that it doesn't matter who's receiving the football. So yeah, I'm hoping for, and I think we all benefit from, good Dak coming back. It's a very well taken point. 2023 was 18 months ago where we were like, MVP? No, now he's the forgotten man.
Right. And I was thinking about it, like he's had such a strange career. He has timed, and I'm not saying this was like on purpose by him, but he has timed his contract pushes like amazingly well. He plays his best right when he needed that money. And that, like, his rookie season, you could have told me anything was going to happen in his career. He got MVP votes, a couple at least. He was like buried, but he got MVP votes in that rookie season. All right, give me another quarterback. Let's say we got one or two left.
Interested in Bo Nix for 2025
yes,
for sure.
That was my next one.
Yeah, and I've been cast incorrectly by Broncos fans as a Bo Nix hater. That is inaccurate. It has not been the case.
They cast everyone in that bucket, yes, unless you just like bow to them. What is it with you, right, Broncos fans?
Very, very bellicose, very pugnacious group of fans. Don't know what's in the air there in Colorado. However, I liked Bo Nix a lot in the draft as like a game manager type. I really wouldn't have liked taking him at 12 overall. They took him at 12 overall. They play him in the first month of the season. He's making mistakes toward the middle of the field. He's overwhelmed in the pocket. He's not good against pressure. The arm is a problem for him down the field. And what do? They reduce his role in the offense, right? From weeks 1 through 8 to then the back half of the season, he went from throwing behind line of scrimmage 25% of the time to 33% of the time. His air yards dropped 7.9 to 6.6. Time to throw dropped 3.1 to 2.9. They said, hey, a little bit more pointing, a little bit more shooting, and especially like kind of in the 0 to 10 yard, or really the -5 to 10 yard area of the field, we're going to kind of minimize how much decision making we want you to have and how many opportunities you have to push the ball. That really helped the offense. And you saw as his confidence grew, you think about that Bengals game at the end of the season, right? There were returns to the intermediate stuff, return to the downfield stuff that was better than the first time around, because he was just a lot more confident, because the offense was a little bit more balanced and they had defenses in a bind. If there's going to be a year 2 jump, it's not going to be because they're taking more things off his plate. It's going to be because they're putting some stuff back on there. And in year 2, a full NFL offseason or whatever, it's reasonable to expect that he's more comfortable with that than he was last season. So I'm hoping for Bo Nix being more than the game manager that I thought he would be. I thought for last year was a very good proof of concept that, hey, he can point and shoot for the Sean Payton offense. Year 2, we're going to learn if he can be anything beyond that.
Yeah, and he was an effective throw down the field, and that's where like the Breeze comparisons don't totally makes sense, but winning with Sean Payton in a highly disciplined timing offense where the timing and the accuracy kind of overcome any physical limitations, that is a similarity that I think Nix has with Breeze. The difference in Nix's rookie year was just that he never really got over crumbling under pressure, but he is playing behind one of the better offensive lines in the league and one of the better coached offensive lines in the league. Shout out to Sean Payton, who he knows how to find not only the right offensive lineman and the right scheme, but like the right offensive line coach. I think it's Zach Strief. Like he just brings them in, and they're just a great unit. And I think it's the Broncos fans. It's a combination of, I feel like every offseason, I think the Bears are very similar. They have like the most positive local coverage, and so you just believe it. every single season. And it hadn't been going well for a while, but last time it actually did go well and it was happening.
Right, yeah.
And so then they can just stick it in all the haters' faces. But I got to admit, like hearing Sean Payton's confidence and everyone in that building's confidence, I don't know if they're just speaking it into existence, but man, they talk about Bo Nix like, all right, we've got our top 10 quarterback forever. And just the way Sean Payton and this team has just been leading with their chests out all offseason does make me like worried about being wrong about them.
But that's my always thing where it's like, watch the film, look through the information. Sean Payton's telling you what he believes about Bo Nix on the microphone, and then he's telling you what he believes about Bo Nix in terms of how he's calling plays. And we walked out of the bye week, I want to say it was week 10 or something like that, and we're just throwing every single swing screen to Marvin Mims that we can dream up. And that's telling you something about his quarterback and where his offense is at. Now, R.J. Harvey, Pat Bryant, they've added some pieces. And again, year 2 Bo Nix, I think it's reasonable to expect him to give more on his plate. But Sean Payton told you what he thought about Bo Nix in his rookie year. He might have ideas for him year 2, year 3, but he told you what he thought about him. He really did.
Yeah, and the argument for Nix certainly is, he came into the league with like a lot of experience, but he is a quarterback who, along with his coach, is going to take all the information that they got from last year and really could be a much more consistent quarterback this season, focusing in on his strengths. And there is absolutely a path to him being like a top 12 type of quarterback this year, which is wild and proving us all wrong. They've already gotten pretty far along that path. All right, I'm going to pick one more guy. And we've talked Penix a lot on this offseason, so I'm not going to...
I was going to say, neither one of us has done JJ or Penix, so I feel like we're the most layups for this conversation.
I think part of that is just, though, that I've talked about them a lot, and I thought this would be a good exercise to like talk about some guys we haven't as much on this show. Like Joe Burrow, who to me made a major step up, is another option of like the top guys that I find very interesting. Jordan Love is so box office, it's so up and down. He's interesting. This is a long way of me, just giving some honorable mentions before talking about Kyler Murray. Because I'm
good one.
I'm just endlessly fascinated about his career, and the year 2 step up in this system didn't really happen. I always think like he doesn't necessarily, and I think about him and Trevor Lawrence similarly, he doesn't always necessarily have the natural feel of like what levers to pull and what buttons to like, turn up in a given game in terms of what he's seen and everything. And so that might always hold him back. And even at the end of last year, saying, I got to run more. He's been dialing back. I got to run more. I don't need to run as much, like his whole career. And so that natural feel, I don't know if you can fix that, but it's year 3 in this offense. It's good weapons around him. I like the coaching staff overall, and I think it's go time. I do think they've had so much faith in him. This is a year for him to really deliver on that faith in a more consistent level, or I think he's going to be on the trade block next year because he's obviously a good enough NFL quarterback. He is absolutely a talented starting NFL quarterback. But I do think this organization might think after this year, if there's no progress, that like, let's see what we can get for him. I do think he's kind of entering that season.
And if you are John Gannon, this will be year 3 for you. If you are Monty Ossenfort, this will be year 3 for you. And you finish the end of the season, you're 9-8, you miss the playoffs. Then you start saying to yourself, do I make a Kyler Murray move so as to keep my seat for the next couple of years, right? And like, try to, the Cardinals got to make the playoffs this year, right? Like for Kyler, for Gannon, for Monty, if you want to like, keep this nucleus in place, you have the top 10 pick at wide receiver, Marvin Harrison. You have the top 10 pick at tackle, Paris Johnson. Like this is it. This is how it's supposed to be built. It's like, let's get some fruit for our effort here, right? Let's reap what we've sown now. And so I agree. I think Kyler is good enough, but I also do think, right, stylistically, you play Kyler's way or the highway. And that has been a challenge for the Cardinals to coach around. It's been the challenge for the Cardinals weapons to work with over the course of the last couple of years. You just go watch you some Marvin Harrison back shoulder balls. You just get a sense of Kyler's unwillingness to kind of throw some of these contested balls and his difficulty seeing these routes open up. And it's like, all right, like it feels like there's a ceiling on a Kyler Murray offense. I would love to see that ceiling broken. It feels like they have the weapons and the offensive minds to do so, but it's like, yeah, you got to see it before you believe it.
Right. He's someone that, like, if you just dropped him, I guess you could say this about a lot of quarterbacks, but if you could drop him in Philadelphia or something, it's like, I would just love to see that, you know what I mean? Or a different offense, but he doesn't have that. And I mentioned that I like the weapons, but that assumes a pretty big jump from Marvin Harrison to really be that like number 1 with Trey McBride, who I kind of see as like the fulcrum of this offense. And then the other guys like Dortch and Michael Wilson kind of fall into place as the supplementary guys. you're a lead guy, Ben Solak. What do you got coming up this offseason? I know during the season you're writing, you're on weekly on the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny. Tough that he gets billing above you, but he
I
has
just prefer
seniority.
to think of it as featuring Benny, and there was a typo on the graphics. But yeah, we're writing during the offseason as per usual. I have the ultimate NFL draft coming out. I want to say next week, which is the best pick at all picks 1 through 262. Yeah, it's a fun one. So we got the good goofy offseason content coming out. The training camp stories will start coming out pretty soon. So if you're reading NFL content in July, which you should not be, but if you are,
no, you should be. You should be.
Yeah, all right. Pay my bills.
I love that sort of stuff, and I love when Ben pops up with his big fishing pictures, because maybe he's not the biggest quarterback around, but he's a real man just catching big old fish
I
in
have
the
my
Midwest.
fishing hat right here. It's very good. It's a nice solid.
That is
gives me a decent amount of shade. Yeah,
that is a preposterous prop. Everyone, check it out on the YouTube show. Subscribe, and then comment about that fishing hat. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, thank you to Ben, and thanks to everyone, basically, that has been listening over the last year since we dropped this NFL Daily. I'm going to bring in my producer here, Eric Roberts. You've been working double time, overtime to deliver the listeners some good content, Eric, in this dead time. We have the top 25 players of the last 25 years. I know you and Gavin and Chris Babona have been doing double the amount of episodes over the last few weeks. So tell me what you think. Give me the pitch for top 25 players of the last 25 years.
It's one, I want you to listen to it. It's going to be 6 episodes.
Yeah.
4 at a time, 5 at a time, 3 at a time, as we work our way to the final, crescendo of a year of NFL Daily.
Yes.
It was a great project, fun stuff to look back on. Chris, who took this project by the horns, a younger guy. It was fun to go back through the NFL aughts with him.
Yes.
And it was cool to look back. I mean, I'm not trying to give away any of the players,
It's fine. It's fine. You can give away some. So that's going to be starting on Monday. Mina Kimes is our first episode, and Steve Weiss is going to be our second. We have Brian Baldinger. We have Nate Tice, Bill Barnwell, Kevin Harlan did an episode. That was really exciting. So it's some of my favorite football minds, and I love this stuff, and I thought it would be a fun way to look back on this century. I've been covering the NFL since 2003, so basically this whole time, and think about the very best of the best and put them in an order. And oh, by the way, also give us a little bit of a break. Eric, we're putting this up, and I'm as excited about these episodes as any that we've done over the last year. So it's not really a break for the listener, but we started July 9th, I believe, for NFL Daily, and we've been cranking since. You've been keeping track. How many episodes have we done?
252 episodes of NFL Daily in one calendar year, basically. I know those top 25s will kind of extend past the calendar year mark.
It's okay.
But everything has been recorded. 252 episodes, recaps, Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, previews, 252 episodes in one calendar year. Not quite daily. I know it's in the title. I know you love the daily part of our show title.
Well, we got the weekends.
Yes, but that's a lot of football in one calendar year.
Yeah, we got the weekends. We weren't counting the weekends. And frankly, once the season starts, we're doing about 6 episodes a week. And we will let you know. We have some really exciting announcements about what we're doing for the 2025 regular season that's coming. All your favorite people, of course, Patrick Claybon and Steve Weiss and Jordan Rodrigue and Colleen Wolfe and Nick Shook. Everyone is going to be back, and we're cranking up the content, and we will be back doing daily episodes, responding on the news of the day starting July 21st. But we'll have some of these 25 players and 25 years episodes in the meantime, and Jordan might pop into the feed too while I am over in Japan. I just wanted to say thanks to you, Eric, for doing everything over this last year, and to Chris and Gavin too, assisting. Of course, Randy Chavez, who's no longer working because he moved on to a great job, and more than anything, thanks to the listeners for listening. So it's not goodbye, because I'll be in the feed, but it really has meant everything to me and my family, everything everything that happened transitioning from around the NFL to this NFL Daily. Like it was absolutely difficult and exciting and everything. And to get through this 1 year has been awesome. And I just wanted to thank everyone that's been listening and watching. Just all the best. So yeah, we will be back on Monday. And that's the Mina Kimes episode. Well, we got some controversial picks here. Not sure how Chiefs fans, Ravens fans, how everyone's going to feel about it. So unfortunately, football is not back, but NFL Daily is always going to be back in your feed. See you in a few weeks.